Cha-cha.
Healthy heart. The rate and rhythm of the heartbeat are controlled by an...
Still a thing that I want to talk about because it's an interesting sort of philosophical, whatever. Ooh, yeah. We're going to talk philosophy, everybody. Stay tuned.
Deep.
Shelly Brisbin is here with us. Yeah. So when Spinoza said, I'm kidding. We're not talking. That's as much as I can tell you about Spinoza. That's how you pronounce his name.
Same. I can't hold up my end of that conversation either.
Yeah, I used to know. John Champion over at Mission Log, he would bring up Spinoza every now and then. And I'd be like, I'd mute my mic and go, he is. It's true. It's true. I don't want to talk about it. Right. So yesterday we talked about we talked a little bit about the event last week, the Time Flies event. We talked a lot about services, bundled services especially that some people don't even know are a thing now, and yet they are, and how kludgy it is and all that stuff. There's been an interesting debate that I've seen come up a couple of times over the past week about the iPhone SE. Apple, of course, announced 2 Apple Watches. I said iPhone SE.
I was just going to tell you that. It's going to happen
forever. And it's going to happen forever.
Of course it is.
Assume anytime that I say iPhone SE during this conversation, what I mean is Apple Watch SE. Because I've been talking about it now for the past 24 hours with a couple of friends, and I keep making the same mistake. I apologize. This conversation is about Apple Watch. So forget anything you hear about iPhone SE. So Apple announced 2 watches last week, the Apple Series 6, Apple Watch Series 6, and the Apple Watch SE. And the Apple Watch SE is basically an Apple Watch Series 5 minus the always-on display and minus the ECG stuff. Is that fair?
Right. It's interesting because when I was watching the event and looking at the SE...
Forgive me. I didn't mean, is that fair that they did that? I mean, is that a fair description?
Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, is that a fair description?
Yeah, I think it is. You could argue that it's closer to... It's like a 4.5, I believe is the way I was describing it to people.
Okay. Please continue. I didn't mean to stop you. I just wanted to make sure that people understood what I was...
Yeah.
So when you were watching the event...
When I was watching the event, I was impressed by the feature set and the way they had positioned the Apple Watch SE in terms of the things that it does have, because it does have the fall detection. And I'll be honest, like I have an older mother who I'm considering getting one of these things for. So they position it as potentially a watch, not only for somebody who's a value shopper, but for a kid or for an older parent. And so once I saw that, I allowed the marketing to get in my head. But I was like, yeah, that makes sense because you have this family setup feature. You have the fall detection. If you have a cellular service, you can use the family setup feature to allow a younger person or an older person to be located. Those seem like smart ideas. It starts at $279. The differentiation between the GPS model and the cellular model is considerably less than the price difference for the Apple Watch 6 and even previous version. So I was looking at it that way. Like I was looking at my grid. I do this thing sometimes when I talk on podcasts. My job is to sit there with the Apple page open and look at the grid. And I'm a super value shopper kind of person, right? I'm always looking for what affordable thing has Apple offered to me. And I thought, oh, the SE is great. The SE totally makes sense. I get it. It's kind of weird that the Apple Watch 3 continues, but fine. And you sent me an article about a couple of articles where people were upset with Apple because the Apple Watch SE doesn't have the ECG feature and that it effectively raised the price for someone to get into an Apple Watch that had an ECG feature.
Well, one of them was not an article. One of them was Lori Gill from iMore, and I don't know if she's written this or not, but she was on a podcast with Allison Sheridan, and I have not heard that show yet, but I've talked to Allison about it, so forgive me if we're playing telephone on this right now. But basically, Lori Gill's argument is, well, they've really made the lowest priced Apple Watch $279 because, yes, there is one that's $199, but that's like the one that gets you in, into the showroom. Because once you get in the showroom, it's like, okay, yeah, well, you can have that for $199, but it's only $80 more, and you can have this one that has all this better stuff. Right. So her argument is that while they technically have a watch that's less than $200, they don't really have one that's less than $280. On the other side,
I don't agree with that. Because I'm playing telephone once removed, I guess.
Go ahead.
But I feel like, and I'm somebody who tends to buy the middle thing as well. But there is a $200 watch, and clearly the pricing has to do with competitive pressures. You've got Fitbit and other watches out there that are available for under 200, so they need to be in the under 200 price point. You can argue about whether what they're offering for 200, how it compares with those other products, because I haven't done the research, but it uses the same operating system. The Apple Series 3, there are a lot of people who still have the Apple Watch Series 3. I would have preferred that they bump the Series 4 down into that price point. I really would have, but they didn't. I don't agree that the Apple Watch Series 3 is not something anybody would ever buy. Now, it's not supportive of the family setup, so in theory, this watch that would be the one you'd give your kid, you can't get them the cheapest one. You have to spend $400 to get your kid a watch. Am I doing that right? No, $300. You have to spend a little over $300 to get your kid a watch that can be part of family setup, because the Apple Watch Series 3 does not do that.
Doesn't do the cellular anymore.
Right. You have to have cellular service.
Right.
And you have to have the cellular version of the watch. So you have to pay more than $300.
Right.
Plus.
Really quickly, I want to go back. You said that it costs less to get into the cellular on the SE than it does on everything else. I want to say the difference is $50 this time. So it's $279 to start for the iPhone SE, and then it's $329 for the iPhone Apple Watch SE.
Right. So it's 50 as opposed to 100 on the Apple Watch Series 6.
I'm still really caught on the fact that I keep saying iPhone.
I know. I was just running over it, but
yeah, that's fine. It's just, because people are it's gonna be a drinking game by the time this episode is over.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, I
like to think people are drinking to one of our episodes.
Yeah, I like to think people are drinking to all of my episodes, which is weird because for a lot of people they come out at 5:30 in the morning. So maybe it's not the best thing. So going the other way, then the VentureBeat article that I sent you was from somebody who basically thinks it is an affront that Apple has not done the Apple Watch Series 4 down to the $199, or that they haven't put the health features, all of the health features, minus the blood oxygen thing, I guess, because that's the newest one. So that's always going to be at the top of the line, I suppose. But was it Jeremy Horowitz? Is that who it was?
I don't remember the byline.
Yeah. So somebody at VentureBeat has basically said, so my wife has an irregular heartbeat and I've got a little bit of an irregular heartbeat and we have kids who may have inherited that. My plan was that I was going to, get them the cheap watch when the cheap watch supports the AFib detection. But now Apple is artificially keeping the AFib detection out of the cheapest watch. And so that, according to this article, is inhumane. And on the one hand, I'm like, it's a device. I mean, some devices are going to be more protective than others. You could make that argument for almost everything out there that's made, that the best of what you have should go into the least of what you have, so that everyone can be safe. At the same time, you seriously are possibly talking about the difference between life and death for some people because they can't afford $450 for the blood oxygen thing, but they could afford $279. So at least we'll know when they fall down or when their heart goes nuts. But the people who couldn't afford either of those things, well, it's great that they know when to exercise, but that's not going to help if they fall and break their leg and go down a ravine while they're exercising and nobody's able to find them.
Right. I was of mixed minds when I read this too, because as I started the article, even when I was reading this writer's story, I was just like, I am certainly in sympathy with the situation that your family finds themselves in. He said they had purchased standalone ECG devices, which is a thing. I didn't know that was a thing, but it's a thing. And they were hoping that the Apple Watch would be a solution to that problem that was less expensive and also has more functions and stuff like that. So I'm sympathetic to that. Yeah. At the same time, I'm sort of like, wait, what does Apple owe you? I mean, why shouldn't that device be $100, $50? I think when the Series 4 came out, I said something like, because it had fall detection and had the ECG, I said, wouldn't it be great if Apple would create a device that was essentially only those things? And so if you didn't want a watch with all of the watchy watch features, that you could buy something that was just a monitor of that kind that could then still communicate with your iPhone or something like that. And so that was just a thought I had, and they haven't done that. Mm-hmm. So So I'm not, I'm sort of, a little, I'm not prepared to go all the way with him. At the same time, the point that he made that I thought was interesting was the idea that Apple, instead of just ratcheting the Series 4, a device that already existed, down to $199 and making it sort of the bottom of the line product, they designed a new product with, some new innards and a different combination of features that they could charge $80 more for. So they went to some affirmative efforts to create a product that's more expensive than the methodology that they'd used before. He gave the example of how the iPhone 5 and the iPhone 5S are very similar, and other products that Apple has, done small upgrades to, and then taken the lower product and put it at the bottom of the line. And so that's somewhat compelling. And the other thing too is that Apple, it's really a hard call because Apple does open itself up to this kind of criticism because they are not shy about telling you how awesome their devices are in terms of saving lives and, helping people's health.
Yeah.
And some of that, it always feels like hyperbole and makes me a little uncomfortable when they do it. I'm not disbelieving stories that individuals tell. I mean, I know people in my life, at least a couple, who have said that they learned things about their heart rate and heart rhythm that they didn't know because they have Apple Watches. And, when I heard that from those people, I took it more seriously. But Apple's always going to open themselves up to those kinds of charges because they put themselves out there as a company that's concerned about health and a company that's concerned about planet. They're also a profit-making business that makes decisions about what products are going to cost what amount of money in the same way that most other businesses do. And that's just the reality.
Well, and this goes to a whole big question, though, that we have around healthcare, I guess, here in the U.S. and maybe around the world. I mean, should that be a differentiating feature?
Right.
The differentiating feature maybe should be you get this, number of exclusives with Apple Music, or you get, this whistle and bell if you buy the cloud storage. When you're talking about something, if you're literally going to stand up there and say, this is going to save people's lives, and then your next sentence is going to be, and 50% of the country can't afford it. Because, I mean, that's not what the next sentence is. The next sentence is, and it starts at, $429 or whatever it starts at, right?
Right.
I mean, there are translations to that sentence which do include, yes, this could save your life. Unfortunately, you didn't work hard enough, or unfortunately, you didn't inherit enough, or unfortunately, you're going to have to choose between rent or this thing that might save your life. And that sounds extreme, but it only sounds extreme to me because I'm not that person. Although sometimes I wonder if I am that person because I'm not getting the next watch, even though it has all the stuff, because I don't want to spend the money on it. So who knows? Maybe, as I'm lying there waiting for an ambulance, I'll go, maybe that $429 wouldn't have been the worst money to spend. I don't know.
But that's a choice that you presumably could have made.
Yes,
you could
exactly
have made that choice.
Right.
Many other people couldn't have made that choice, or had they made that choice, something else in their life that was more certain than finding a heart problem.
Right.
Would have gone without. And, my initial, because I wasn't hip to the fact that the ECG feature was left out of the SE, because the feature I was interested in, which was fall detection for my mom, is there.
Yeah.
And had it not been there, I learned a lot about blood oxygen when my father was in the hospital with a stroke. So I'm not saying that it's necessary that it be included in the low-end watch, but I'm more attuned to those particular features because I've had life experiences that connect me to them.